public meetings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda for this evening's meeting on the town website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, for those of you participating, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Since we will not be voting during this workshop and no votes will be taken, a roll call attendance or reading of the meeting ground rules is not required. These will occur when we begin our January 20th, 2021 school committee meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. tonight. So we will start tonight's meeting with information from the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Personnel, Keith Taverna, followed by an update on COVID-19 statistics in the town from Mark Leo, and then an open discussion. So Keith, take it away.
Thank you. So Mary, can you share the COVID information graphics presentation? And just a reminder to the community what Mary's about to share. These are the latest statistics from the last time we met with the school committee. This information is posted to our website either Friday afternoon or Monday morning, depending on the timing of the data release. So to start in our presentation, we always share what the latest guidance from DPH, the governor's office, and DESE is. So you'll see this again is the gray, green, yellow, and red, showing that DESE and the state is recommending a hybrid format when you are in red or yellow. Go to the next slide. Again, our health and safety measures, our priorities is always to mitigate the risk and to mitigate the spread. So hand washing, mask wearing, physical distancing, and staying home when sick are the key mitigation strategies that we use. So then we have our updates for our data. The first data point is from December 18th. That week there was 185 cases in the community. 40 of those cases were in individuals under the age of 18, which was 21.6% of the cases across the town. 13 cases were reported in the school setting during that week, and the town's positivity rate was 6.77%. Go to the next slide. This was for Friday, December 25th. You'll note that we added an asterisk to this slide and the next two indicating the short-term remote learning model that we entered into from 12/16 to 1/8, which obviously would have an effect on the number of cases reported in the school setting. So for the week of December 25th, there was 187 cases reported across the community, 37 under the age of 18, with 19.7% of the cases being in individuals under 18. 15 cases were reported in the school that week. Again, often there's a lag, even though we had gone into that remote learning. When there is a case, the way it gets reported or when those positive test results come back, we still saw those positive cases continue into the short-term remote learning. And we anticipate to see the same, that we won't be reporting many cases necessarily today or tomorrow as we get back into the swing of things. But then as we have students in the building for longer, those cases would start to come up more. And again, it was a 6.08% positivity rate that week. So we go to the next slide is January 1st, 178 cases in the community that week, 39 cases in children under the age of 18, which was 21.9% of the cases across town. And again, there was only one in the school setting during that time, as most of that week we were in the remote learning, and the townwide percentage was 6.10% for the positivity rate. And then here's our fourth week since our last meeting. Again, January 8th, 168 cases in the community, 33 under the age of 18, which is 19.6% of the cases 0 cases in the schools with a 6.88% positivity rate. So you'll see that the data effectively leveled out, and we didn't see a post-Christmas or post-New Year's surge as of our last week ending on Friday the 8th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Keith. Mark, can you talk a little bit about COVID in the community?
Sure. So thank you for the invite, Mr. Chairman. So I'm Mark Carlisle. I'm the Public Health Director for the town of Danvers. Keith, I appreciate you running through the data there. It was pretty interesting. The last time I was before the committee, I had talked about what we were expecting to see after the holidays, and it was, the predictions were fairly grim. We seem to have somehow leveled off instead, or made some gains in some areas. Some of the things Keith had touched on in particular, so the percent positivity went up slightly, but we saw decreases in the total number of active cases. Active cases meaning people in town who are actually currently sick with COVID. So we saw a decrease in that. And then we also saw decreases, or at least a leveling out of cases in school-age children. That was all very, very, very encouraging news. There's, it's tough to come to some sort of a conclusion based on those small data points. But by all appearances, Danvers socially distanced through the holidays, and it was really a bright point in this whole process. Talking to the nursing staff that are following up on these cases, their story hasn't changed. The cases that we are seeing are still coming from social and family gatherings, and then from private or club sports. They continue to roll in. We had, meeting Lisa, Keith, some other town staff, as well as myself, had met recently, and we reviewed all of that data, and we did not find any objections to the school reopening on the 11th as it's occurred. Beyond that, there's not really too much to say. I can't help but feel good to say that we're not seeing that post holiday increase that we expected, and like we had seen from Thanksgiving, we definitely saw over a 14-day period a sharp increase after Thanksgiving, and it didn't surface after the holidays. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Great, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. When we start, Kathleen Murphy, would you like to start?
Sure. I have one question for Mark regarding the positivity rate. I guess, maybe it's because I'm a bit of a neophyte about public health, but I'm curious about how the January 7th positivity rate went up, but the cases seem to have leveled off. Is there any explanation for that apparent discrepancy?
Well, yeah, the percent positivity does not necessarily correlate to the number of active cases, because the number of active cases is simply a number of people versus a percent. So again, so it's why I said with these small data points, it's tough to, draw some sort of a conclusion. But if you were to perhaps maybe decrease the number of people being tested, that could maybe cause an increase. We're not really sure.
Okay.
Anything else, Kathleen?
No, that was just the one thing that kind of stood out. Thanks.
Sure. How about Kathleen Spinelli? Any questions?
I don't have any questions at this point, and thank everybody. It's always informative to hear the explanations behind the numbers.
Great, thank you. How about Catherine Johnson?
No questions, thank you.
To our school committee, Eric.
Yeah, Mark, is it fair to say really the only way you could have an increased positivity rate but less actual cases or a flat line of cases would in fact be less testing? You know, you test less people, so you could get a higher positivity rate, but you wouldn't get necessarily the numbers.
Yeah, that is possible. That was one of the reasons I had mentioned is if there were less people, I believe I mentioned it, less people overall getting tested. Yes. So we can pull the numbers of the actual number of people tested and graph that. Ultimately, though, we're looking at that percent positivity combined with the other data to kind of create a bigger picture, though.
So how are we doing as a town compared to what's going on with the state? Because the numbers from the state, in some cases, appear to be quite striking in terms of positivity rate and numbers of cases on a daily and weekly basis and 7-day basis. So how does Danvers shape up compared to the state averages and whatnot?
Danvers has typically been on par. I think the only exception to that was earlier on in the spring with just the total number of cases that we had. And that was really tied to the fact that it was hitting the nursing homes very hard. But as of now, we're fairly average, in some ways less, in some ways slightly more, but we're fairly average when it comes to all of these statistics.
How are the local hospitals doing in terms of available beds, available ICU beds, that sort of numbers?
Yeah, they're still crowded. They're still nervous. There were recent meetings with community leadership in this region, along with leadership from the local hospitals. And, you know, they're, of course, looking for the communities to do as much as possible to reduce the number of people hitting their emergency departments, winding up in the ICUs. But yeah, right now the beds are still, occupancy rate is high in the hospitals.
Okay. Critically high, so that there are risks in terms of people who need to get into hospitals for other treatment, or just high? I'm not trying to pin you down, but it is.
No, I understand. Yeah, you're asking essentially how bad is it? It's pretty bad. There are very many people. These numbers change pretty frequently. I had heard recently there was something only like a 15% vacancy in the ICU in I believe it was Beverly. It is pretty bad in the hospitals. They are absolutely crowded.
Okay. I may have more of it for the moment. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, great. Thanks, Eric. And my apologies, Jody. I went to the school committee without seeing you, and you're like the one sitting right in front of me on my screen. So I apologize. Do you have any questions at all for Mark?
I actually did have a question, so thank you. I'm not shy, so I was going to let you know you skipped me.
Good. It wasn't intentional.
I didn't think so. My question was actually sort of outside of the data that we're looking at, knowing that there is a new variant of the COVID-19 virus that's floating around, and just wondering sort of, is it in Massachusetts? Is this something the public health departments are talking about? I know the UK had to go on some pretty intense lockdowns because of it. And is that something that we're worried about could happen here in the United States or even in Massachusetts?
So it is in the US, that's been confirmed. Is it in Massachusetts? I'm not entirely clear. It probably is. I think the biggest concern when it comes to new variants of COVID they revolve around, will the vaccine be effective against this? And so far our understanding is yes, it will be. So how large of a problem it's going to be, I'm not really sure. The vaccine's rolling out now, people are getting vaccinated. If we can move through that as quick as possible, then it may not matter all that much. In the case that we're not able to, it may spread a little quicker, but I don't think there's an indication that it's necessarily more severe. I don't think we know if it's less severe. There's just so many unanswered questions like this. It's like coming back to March, where everybody had questions similar to what you're asking, and there just were no answers yet. So we'll find out hopefully soon. But it's something that we're all keeping our eye on, and just letting the researchers do the research that needs to be done.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jody?
Nope, that was it for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mary Beth? You're on mute, Mary Beth.
Sorry. Couple questions. I know the town's been doing public testing. Is there plans to have more dates for that?
Possibly. So the testing site has been spearheaded by Jen Breaker, the assistant town manager. We have some dates set up for January, and they're posted on the website at danversma.gov. Anything after that, I'm not really sure. I would have to ask her and get back to you if that's okay.
Sure. My other question related to that is there any specific testing for staff in the town, including teachers and town employees?
Yeah, so we did 1 day of town employee testing, and there is a second day scheduled. So yeah, it's absolutely something that we're interested in seeing done.
Okay, when is that second day, Mark?
Yeah,
I'd have to pull up the site, and I'm on my phone right now.
We haven't released that date yet, Mary Beth. I spoke with Jen Breaker this afternoon, and we'll be releasing that this week to staff, actually with a new sign up methods that rather than going through us, will actually go directly through like the residents have. So we're just waiting on Cataldo to finish that registration link, which is completely different from what I said to Kathy, Kathleen, and Jody this afternoon. Things develop quickly. So it'll be a direct registration. So we're just working on those details, but hoping by Wednesday that we'll be able to release that date and link to staff.
Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. And then just a question about vaccine. Has there been any communication to the town's public health department from the state regarding vaccines for the community or for staffing or any vaccine information?
Very little. So what we've gotten so far, where we're at in phase 1 was, I believe it was the week of Christmas. We were informed, along with everybody else at the same time, that we would be vaccinating first responders. So we just started our clinics today for police, fire, EMS, and some other subgroups that fall under that. After that, it's not clear what we're going to be asked to do. It's not clear where residents will necessarily be getting the vaccine or not. There are many different avenues that are open, though. There's the mass vaccination sites. There is the federal government's contracts with Walgreens and CVS. There is the local board of health who routinely conduct vaccine clinics. So yeah, we don't have answers from the state on that just yet. There seems to be a bottleneck there. And they make announcements as they go, and we're all just, staying nimble and moving as quickly as we can, and we're getting it done.
So do you happen to have any idea in the timeline when they originally said they talked about the vaccines from here to here, this date to this date was going to be phase 1, and then phase 2 is going to be this date to this date? I don't think we're on target for those original dates, are we? Or do you know?
Right now, so we're still in phase 1 right now. Are we on target? Yeah, I believe we are. The first responders, they will be getting their second rounds in February, and then they'll be finished. And phase 2 will begin, I believe it's said in February. So, as far as I can see, yeah, everybody's just kind of like in that waiting area, and we're moving ahead. Whether those dates get revised or not is anybody's guess. That would probably largely depend on the vaccine supply itself.
Right. Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thanks, Mary Beth. Arthur, any questions for Mark?
I'm all set. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, great. Jeff, questions?
No questions. The only comment I would make is, though, anybody can just go down to the state website and you can download our data. So you can see, like, over the past 3 weeks, our testing has gone down. It was 6,055 a couple weeks ago. It was 4,838 the past reporting week, which was January 7th. So that's why you're getting the percentage positivity. all of the other metrics we've got there as well. It's the total numbers, et cetera, are there too. So if folks are interested more so than I think just the static data, but looking at the trends, I would highly suggest doing that because all that data is there and it's really, really good background for it as well. So that's why the positivity rate's gone up.
Great. Anything else, Jeff?
Nope.
And my only question mark is how has the testing been received by the public? I'm going Wednesday for my test, and just wondering, you know, are there long lines? Are people taking advantage of it or not?
People are definitely taking advantage of it. We're recommending that, you know, if you want to avoid even the potential for a wait, to make your appointment a little bit later on in the day, if possible. Yeah, so in the
now
mornings,
you tell me after I made mine for 8 a.m.
That's it. That's exactly what I was about to say. That is when the line is typically the longest. Yeah, so that's, yeah, you'll wait a little for a brief period there. Nothing excessive. If you were to compare our site to, say, a Stop the Spread site in Salem, I mean, I've spoken to people that have waited anywhere from, you know, 4 to 7 hours in line at a Stop the Spread site. At ours, you're probably not going to wind up waiting more than an hour ever. And most times it's more like, you know, maybe 20 minutes, especially if you make it a little bit later on in the day.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that people are taking advantage of it. It's, you know, it's a free service, so it's a great way to be able to get tested and not have to go to one of those mega sites, like you said, that are taking, you know, hours and hours to get through.
And it's also it's a PCR test, so it's nice and reliable.
And Dave, we'll talk about some of these topics again later on during our regular meeting during the educating during the pandemic about vaccination, about the testing, about pool testing, which the governor announced on Friday. We do want to say thank you to Mark as we get ready to do some of that on-site testing. He was able to have the nurses be part of the first responders since they'll be doing that testing. So to help protect our nurses as we get ready to start that on-site testing sometime next week or early the following week. And then I've had a couple conversations with Judith Ryan as the public health nurse about different options that we have, depending on what the state says to us, but offering even Danvers as one of those sites if needed, or if it would be helpful for teacher vaccination when we get into phase 2. So anything that we can make it easier for, obviously our teachers and staff to have it in the least obstructive way, as well as helping surrounding towns, that we would be happy to do our part.
Great, thank you. Mark, anything we didn't ask that you think we should have, that you didn't include in your opening remarks?
I think, I don't think so. I think that things are looking a little bit clear in terms of, you know, whether to go remote or stay hybrid. And the numbers are staying pretty flat so far. So, yeah, I would say we could probably pretty safely leave it here, and I look forward to another opportunity to come back and, you know, we can just kind of have another rundown and see how the town's doing.
Yeah, I think we'll plan to do it again before our next school committee meeting on February 8th.
8th? Okay.
Yes. So
Thank
you. Get on your calendars now. That would be fantastic. And we are just about running up to 7 o'clock. So for those of you watching on DCAT, we're going to take a really short break and then come back for our regularly scheduled school committee meeting. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 11th, 2021 School Committee meeting. As a preliminary matter, this is David Thompson, School Committee Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Eric Crane,
Yes.
Jeff Kay,
Yes.
Arthur Skamras,
Yes.
Mary Beth Berry.
Yes.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lisa Dana,
Yes.
Keith Taverna,
Yes.
and Mary Wormers.
Yes.
And I believe we also have Max Leet with us. Max, are you able to hear us? I think Max is having some technical difficulties. So we're going to try and get in touch with him so he can make sure he can hear us. I have a little bit to read here, though, before we get started. While recent school committee meetings have been held in person with social distancing in mind, this meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order issued on December 22nd, 2020, requiring all public meetings revert to remote due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth related to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda for this meeting on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Danvers School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, for those attending, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Now, in terms of the meeting material, all supporting materials that have been provided members of this body will be available on the district's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. And finally, the meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your microphone, your phone, or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And for items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comment. It is publiccomment@danvers.org. This email address is also posted with the agenda and shown online with the streaming of this meeting. Residents will email comments and they will be reviewed by the school committee and superintendent. They will not be answered during this meeting. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Now, we're going to call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before I move on with the mission statement, just wanted to check, Max, are you able to hear us?
Yep, I'll get on my end. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. Glad to have you aboard. Thank you. So the mission statement for the Danvers Public Schools is the Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. With that, we'll move to items of interest from the superintendent.
Thank you. I do have one item this evening, and that is to share with the community that last week we did announce to our high school and to our middle school faculty and to families that Adam Federico, our current principal at Holton Richmond, will become our next high school principal starting on July 1st of 2021. So we look forward to this smooth transition, and we will be posting, it's actually already on School Spring, for our next middle school principal.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Items of interest to the school committee. I have one, but let's go down first. Eric Crane.
I do have one, Mr. Chair, on the Martin Luther King program. As you know, typically the last several years that's been held on the afternoon of the holiday at the high school. And there have been speakers and refreshments. Naturally, due to COVID, there have been some changes made. So in working with the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, DCAT will broadcast a virtual event on January 18th at 2 p.m. and at 6 p.m. They will have artwork and student performances. And as well, I'll read a note from the schools to our families. Town of Danvers is able to hold its MLK celebration again this year, but with all things COVID, a virtual celebration. As part of the celebration, we would like to highlight those in our Danvers Public School community who would like to share their thoughts on the legacy of MLK, or how to promote acceptance and inclusion in the community, or how they feel accepted and included in the community. DCAT will be happy to schedule a time for families or students to film their narratives for the program at the DCAT studio. Participants can also use their own devices, but they're told to do so. If you're going to use your own device, turn the camera horizontally. The other thing is all this would have to be done by tomorrow. So if you have any interest in participating in the program, please reach out to Ben Thomas at DCAT virtually immediately. So you can, if you want to try and participate, you can get something done tomorrow. But having said that, I'm sure it'll be a wonderful program, and we're very glad that many of our students will be participating in one way or another.
Great. Thanks, Eric. It's always a great program, and it's nice they were able to adjust it this year for COVID. Jeff, any
No,
items of
nothing for
interest?
me. Nothing, thanks.
Mary Beth,
All set. Thank you.
Arthur.
All set, thanks.
Great. And I just have one item of interest. I'd like to acknowledge the receipt of an email from Danvers resident Todd Cormier that we all received on Friday afternoon. And I'm just going to read that so everyone's aware of it. It says, to all members of the Danvers School Committee, Danvers School Administration, and the Danvers Teachers Association. This letter is written on behalf of the many collected signatures below from concerned parents throughout the Danvers community. The intent of this letter is to bring the children of this district back to a full-time in-school learning environment by this spring, 2021. It is alarming to say the least that nearly 6 months have elapsed since the end of the last school year, and we have yet to hear it publicly stated that a plan exists to bring the children back to school full-time this year. A great deal of scientific literature, medical data, and surrounding community evidence exists to support the children go back full-time. We request a motion be made during the January 11th school committee meeting to vote on beginning immediate negotiations among the necessary parties that are required to bring this plan to fruition. We recognize that a counter argument exists for nearly any statement made, so we understand that it is likely many points will be raised that offer opposing views from our own. These would suggest a continued hybrid model of learning is the best that the district can accomplish. We request that your consideration of both sides of the discussion be observed through the lens of the common good for these children/students, educational and emotional well-being. In addition, and as part of these negotiations, we request that a temporary post be made available to a member of the parental community. The purpose of this request is to create an acting liaison between the parties involved in any closed-door negotiations and the balance of every parent who believe it is time to bring these students back to school. We thank you for your consideration of this request, and we welcome any questions you may have leading up to the January 11th school committee meeting. In the email also included a link to a petition on change.org. So I wanted to share that. And moving on, we're going to go to Max with items of interest from the Student representative.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. Over the break, our DECA team led by Mrs. Bollier had a virtual districts week where we turned in our projects and presentations to be judged. My project was a community awareness project focused on the Anti-Discrimination Club and, more importantly, working to improve the culture of Danvers High School, and it was called the Equity Project. A key component of the Equity Project is a cultural equity survey, which I drafted with both Mrs. Wermers and Peter Piazza, who acts as a survey specialist for the Center of Excellence in Education, or the CEE. Mrs. Wermers and I have begun to analyze the results, hence the survey was only released on December 14th. But we are scheduled to meet with Peter again in the near future to further analyze the data. But also over the break, the Anti-Discrimination Club had a very important meeting the day after the insurgents on the Capitol building to discuss in an open environment some of the scary material that had transpired. We felt that it's really important to give the students a place to speak after such scary events went down, and just for a place for them to feel comfortable to talk about some of the important events that went down. Cool. And that is all.
Great, thank you, Max, as always, and we appreciate it. Any questions for Max?
I would just say, Mr. Chairman, thanks for getting people together to give them a chance to talk about what happened last Wednesday, Max. Very important that people who have any concerns, students who are concerned, had a safe place to go and chat about what they saw, which was unsettling to say the least. So thanks for doing that.
Definitely, a lot of kids had a lot of different unique perspectives, which were interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was an important thing to do. So thanks for spearheading that, Max.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna.
Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary Beth.
Thank you, Max, and good luck in the DECA competition this year.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Max.
All right, we're going to move on to information from the superintendent.
Can I ask a question before we go, Dave?
Of course.
Only because you read the petition, and is that something that we're going to discuss at the February meeting, or I just don't want to just leave it hanging there as the petition was submitted. I know it was too late to do anything this month, but.
Yeah, we couldn't add it on as an official agenda item. If you want to discuss it, we certainly can, whatever you'd like.
Well, it's only I'm just the request of the petitioners, so it's not my petition. So.
Right. Yeah, they had asked to be added to the agenda item. We received it on Friday afternoon after the agenda had been posted. So legally, we could not add to the agenda to put it on as a specific item. So I told Mr. Cormier that I would bring it up as a item of interest from the school committee.
All right, so it's up to them to ask if they want to get it on the February agenda.
Yeah, I would assume so, and I guess what exactly they might be looking for.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there as to if they want. I got from reading it that they want some kind of of action or discussion from us, and so I just and obviously I agree with you that it was too late to get on the agenda for this month. So I would just, I guess, leave this, that if they want it to be on our agenda as they asked for it for January, then they should ask to get it on the agenda for February. And what we can do about it, I don't know, but they shouldn't have a right to bring a petition and to have us discuss it. So,
of course.
Well, all right, I'll ask to put it on the agenda. So then it'll be an agenda item. If someone wants to speak to it, they can.
That's absolutely fine. And that's, that was my initial response to Mr. Cormier. So that's fine. We can certainly add it as an agenda item for next meeting, and we'll do so.
Great, thanks.
Sure, absolutely. Lisa, information from the superintendent.
Thank you. This evening we have 4 items, and we'll begin with something that we have every year. And again, in this time of COVID, it will look different. So I'm going to ask Mary Wermers, who continues to work with the middle school and with our DPW. She will present the winners just in a different format this evening.
Yes. All right. Thank you. It is
Mary.
Yep.
Sorry, before you do that, I just happened to open my phone and saw an email here. And it was from 6:35 saying that the live stream had not started on YouTube and the meeting is not being shown on DCAT. So this is for our friends at DCAT. I just want to make sure that at least this meeting is airing on DCAT if for some reason the last one did not.
Should I want me to chat with DCAT?
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Right.
because I know they can't hear us.
Right. I looked at it quickly also, Mr. Thompson. I think it was just the timing of it because we took that break in between. So it was about the exact same time the email came. We were about ready to open up the workshop.
Okay, great. I just wouldn't want to be, having the meeting without the public being able to have access to it. So.
Thank you for double checking.
Sure, thanks. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mary. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sending them a little message. All right. So I have the pleasure to share with you, and I'm going to share the screen. I can actually show the artwork this year. Introduce the winners of the DPW's recycling calendar contest. These winners will be awarded their certificates starting tomorrow at Holton Richmond. So cohort A students will be receiving their certificates tomorrow, and then the cohort B students will receive their certificates on Thursday. So the first, I'm going to go through all the months, but on the cover, Haley Lipatoro was the winner, and she is displayed on the cover of this calendar. In January, Emily Sullivan, her artwork adorns this month. In February, we have Jasmine Baccarano as our winner. I'm sorry, I stumbled on that. March is Colin Thornburg. April is Riley Shepard. May is Jackson Vaughn. June is Ava Lebastier. July is Delilah Myers. August is Delia Smith. September is Natalie McConnell. October is Patrick Horahan. November is Nathan Wise. And December is Gabriella Goes. So these calendars are available to the public, and they can be found outside of DPW near the white drop-off box and at the business division at 2 Borough Street. They are there during operating hours, so Monday through Thursday, January 11th through 14th from 8:30 to 3:30 p.m. and Friday, January 15th from 8:30 to 11 a.m. She's also, there are also calendars available at Danvers Hardware Store and at the post office. And each school should have a few copies in their office if parents are there dropping off students. So congratulations to all our artists.
Great. I'm always so impressed by their artwork because I struggle doing a stick figure. So I'm so impressed with them every year. They did another great job this year.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for presenting that. And thank you to Gail from DPW who coordinates this every year. And again, congratulations to all of our students. Thank you. Okay, so next we have an equity presentation. We spoke about this in the fall over the summer and have had numerous different things that we have been working on. And we are really looking forward to 2021 as we start off January, as it's mid-school year. We have successfully reopened schools, and with that, the work that has been happening within our schools would like to share with school committee and our DMS community, and then talk about what our next steps are. So I will begin in a moment, and Mary Wormers will really be able to talk about the details of the work that has been happening. We did include on the agenda that DMS Cares would be part of this. Unfortunately, Lila is unable to be with us at this meeting tonight, so Mary has that information, and then we'll bring a closure to the presentation for tonight with highlighting some of the pieces at the high school. So as we work as a district and we have our strategic plan, any work that we have as a district, it then moves to our 7 schools and how it's implemented at each of the 7 schools following along. So tonight we would like to give that example of our high school. Thank you. Okay, Mary, next slide, please. Thank you. We have this slide, and you'll see it again in our next presentation, that we are an equity-seeking district. Really, we are moving forward from where we've been with our strategic plan and our mission to really looking at racial equity over this coming school year, and we're committed to this for the long term. So to have a safe and supportive learning environment, we have our physical safety, our emotional safety, and the equitable learning environment for all of our students. Our vision statement for 2023 is that the Danvers Public Schools is an inclusive community of learners that is respectful of individual differences, in which all students are valued for their unique strengths, talents, and challenges. A welcoming environment for students and families is evident, and diversity is valued and celebrated. So our vision statement is a little bit longer, but this is really the priority for our equity work. And again, we have a foundation for the work that we have been doing. We're midway through our strategic plan, and it's an evolving process. It's not a static document, and we update it on a yearly basis with what is most current for our students in our 7 schools. With this, the theory of action that you have seen, again, we really try to stay committed to our work, and when we make decisions, that we go back to our strategic plan. So here, if the Danvers Public Schools, that we promote a safe and healthy learning environment that's conducive to high academic achievement for all students, that we provide engaging learning experiences that allow for student voice and choice, and we believe that all students can and will learn to their highest potential, then our students will achieve our vision that they will be productive, responsible, caring citizens of the global community and achieve their definition of success. And this has really led us to, Mary, the next slide, please. Thank you. The connection to our core values. These core values have been with our district for a number of years of caring, quality, commitment, and collaboration. As we continue to move forward in our work with racial equity, we are really shifting to courageous caring. And that connected to what I shared earlier is that the belief that each child has the ability to succeed. We focus on our social and emotional learning for the sense making of our world. All adults have this responsibility in working with the students, our children in our school district, in our community, and that we have to have it be psychologically safe, that we need to be able to really listen to each other and speak up for our vision to become our reality.
Great. So I'm going to take over from here. So a specific statement in our strategic plan that supports the work that we're doing through cultural proficiency and equity is that all students will be supported in an inclusive, emotionally supportive, and culturally responsive environment. So I think throughout this strategic plan, what we really worked on is trying to pull some coherence together in all the work we were doing. We had been doing little bits and pieces of cultural responsive teaching and learning work. We had done a lot on equity, but it was here and there. And I feel like this strategic plan helped us start to pull all the pieces together. So on this slide, I think you've seen some parts of it in prior meetings. So I'll go through this quickly and then highlight what we've been doing this school year. So if you've remembered from many of our past presentations, we talk about the Essex County Learning Community Grant, and that's what really helped us kind of reinvigorate our cultural proficiency work. We had a group of teachers, a team of teachers that are our teacher researchers that really learned a lot about cultural proficiency with the organizations like CCE that had worked with us. So they did lots of professional development for us. And we were able to take what we were learning from that work and really infuse it into our teacher professional development, and most specifically around our sheltered English immersion course and our social emotional learning work. We also had a team from Danvers go a couple years back to Zaretta Hammond's Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain 2-day Institute at the Boston Public Schools. That was an amazing experience to be able to meet Zaretta Hammond and really learn from her what she has written in her book that many school districts kind of have embraced. And that work, again, has informed lots of our teacher professional learning, and we try to integrate the ideas that she presents in her book into that training. And then also back with the ECLC work, we started to integrate this cultural proficiency work inside our social emotional learning and our MTSS work that we were doing with them. And we're trying to ensure that everything that we do in the district really has that equitable lens for our kids. And we really felt like the FAR cycle with the formative assessments and understanding where students are at in their learning really was an equitable lens if implemented properly. So really keeping our eye out to make sure that all kids are meeting the objectives we set out for them. And if they don't, what is the action we're going to take to help them get there? We also have a very strong social emotional learning team in the Danvers Public Schools, great team of teachers. We have some that are focused exclusively on providing adult SEL learning experiences, and as well as like a steering committee that's helped really move help inform the district in the social emotional learning that we're going to prepare to use with our students. In the adult social emotional learning program, we are really latched on to the new equity enhancements that Castle has put in their 5 SEL competencies. And so this year is really, we've started to shift, or not shift, but we've really kind of highlighted what those equity enhancements are when we're learning about the 5 competencies. And we've done this work last year as well. And we're really looking forward to teachers implementing the activities with students and really being able to speak well and make good connections for kids around those 5 competencies. And then as we've informed you in earlier meetings, we have done some really a lot of cultural proficiency work with teachers through our reopening professional learning days and through the 3 in-service days that we've had with teachers. So we've done some implicit bias and awareness work. We've done a lot on anti-racism and had some really great text-based discussions with teachers during our in-service days. We are in the process of partnering with ADL for the No Place for Hate program. For training for administrators will take place in January and February, and with students in February and March. We've talked to you about the Great Oak has had a coalition of parents, families, and allies of Black children form and really work with Great Oak to plan programming for students. And we at the district level is really working to form a family coalition for families of students of color. We've also worked with the town, the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. We meet with them multiple times throughout the year. And we've recently been meeting to discuss the Martin Luther King Day celebration, but we also look forward to speaking about curriculum with them at our other meetings. And then finally, next at the another week from now, we're starting a K through 12 study group, striving to be anti-racist educators. It's been a really great opportunity for the curriculum directors to work together and plan a K to 12 experience together. We have around 50 to 60 educators that have signed up and registered for that program, and we look forward to implementing with them. And the real basis for this study group came from an equity institute that we were able to attend at the Teachers College. It was virtual, but a team of us were able to attend that institute and got some great ideas, and they modeled this kind of the framework for this study group that we put together. Oops, for some reason. So as I have been talking on and on, I really wanted to highlight for you kind of the framework for what we are working with teachers on is around with cultural proficiency. And we've really been focused on the National Equity Project's definition for instructional equity, which is reducing the predictability of who succeeds and who fails, interrupting the reproductive practices that negatively impact students, and cultivating the gifts and talents of every student. And as you can see, that really does align with the strategic plan, which we've been talking about all along. So as I said to you when I started speaking, is that we really looked for our strategic plan to kind of pull together and form so some coherence in the equity work that we are doing across the district. And so this graphic, I think, kind of highlights our stakeholder groups, students, faculty and staff, families and administration, and the work that we're doing. And then, so this is a more broad, over to the right is a more broad look at the work we're doing and kind of how it fits together and how it goes across more than one group, stakeholder group. And then to the left is our more specific actions that we've been taking as far as adding in more conversations around equity. And I detailed many of them for you on the last slide. And finally, we wanted to share with you with Danvers Cares and what they've been doing with equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. So as you already know, that in the past 2 years, we've worked on the Why You Matter campaign. And this year we continue to do that, and by adding in this year's freshmen into the halls this year. We spoke about the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, and how they are going to help us with anti-bias training for administrators and the Anti-Discrimination Club and other peer leaders. They are training us so that we are able to implement and become a no place for hate community in their organization. And this will take on topics or projects that look very similar to like the Why You Matter campaign. So the student leaders really kind of work together with teachers and administrators to kind of think about what kind of school-wide projects we can do to really bring forward more understanding of bias and equity for all students. And then finally, we are working with the winter athletes this season to start our Danvers High athletics training for equity. And so we're going to do that by talking about topics around social media, bullying and hazing, inappropriate behaviors, equity, and implicit bias. And so that will be done with the Danvers administration team. I will join them. And we'll be working with all the winter athletic teams to start, and then we will move on to the spring as well. So that is our equity presentation for you.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Great. Thank you both. I had some technical difficulties in the middle of that. So for some reason, you're going to see 2 boxes on the screen there. Questions? Jeff?
No, I mean, I would just thank you for all the work you've done. I think, especially now it's, we're doing what we can in terms of remote and hybrid learning, and to have this component included as far as our thinking, I think I'm glad we're still focused on this as well. So just more of a thank you for the update and the good work here. So definitely appreciate it. Thanks.
Great. Arthur?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much the same as Jeff. A lot of information there. It looks like we're doing a lot of important work, and I just thanks for providing the information, and hopefully we'll continue to move forward with that. Thanks.
Great. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, a question or a comment on the long list of activities, and I noticed that under the Anti-Discrimination Club, that falls to Max Leet on that sort of organizational piece. I just want to emphasize that I think Max is a great young man from what I saw the time we had him meet with the diversity committee and ourselves. He's just terrific. But I also want to make sure that with everything else going on in the demands of being a full-time student and taking on a role that is probably fraught with some emotion, and just making sure that he has the support he needs as he goes forward with the Anti-Discrimination Club. And he seems to have some great ideas, but just want to make sure that the administration and both the high school and at a higher level, that he has people he can always count on to help him navigate whatever waters he needs to navigate.
Thank you. So I was going to share with you that the club does have faculty that participate also, and Dr. Gerard at the high school, I think really is taking the lead with the club also, and in working with Max for the DECA project, and then Mary. So it really has been a real partnership between students and our administration and with our faculty and working together. So Miri has worked on the survey with him, and between our coaching with our the Center for Collaborative Education, the CCE, they had, as he spoke about Peter, they had the expertise to help out with a survey. So we were able to provide that for the group. And it really is a group that has students from all levels. So knowing that Max is a senior this year and wanting this to continue, I think of it as similar to our work with teachers, that we look at teacher leaders and we begin the first year with gathering that base, and then our teacher leaders help us with all of our faculty in the same here, that Max has, there's a group of students working together with the Anti-Discrimination Club, and that they will be able to continue this moving forward.
Okay, I'm glad to hear, very glad to hear that. All of the things that you've shown us that you're doing, the steps that are taking, the different interested parties that are involved, all makes a lot of sense, and hopefully it will go a long way toward changing our culture. The bottom line for me is that, and I don't think we should give this short shrift, this is something we need to talk about. Every member of our staff and every member of our student body has a right to feel safe in our building, and that's safe from bullying, either emotional or physical. They have a right to be treated with dignity for who they are, and to have equal opportunity to go as far as their talents carry them. That should be the expectation and the standard that all of us who are involved in the schools in any way hold for each other, and the standard we hold each other to, and the standard we hold ourselves to. And it goes beyond that, really. It is something I think the town needs to aspire to, let alone, you know, the state, the nation, everybody. We have seen the consequence quite recently of too much silence, too much sort of allowing things to fester underneath the surface and sometimes bubble to the top of the surface. We have to expect more of ourselves. I hope and assume that at the town level, they're looking for ways with their own staff and in terms of hiring to address these issues. And I know that Town Manager Bartha did speak before the Diversity Committee earlier this year, or earlier this school year, I think it was in the fall, and talked about some efforts the town is making. But the culture, because we can do everything in the world that we think is right for our students and our staff here, but a lot can be undone by what the students experience outside of the four walls of our schools. And so this really has to be a continuing town effort to get us to a place where the better angels of our nature control.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Mary Beth.
No, I just want to thank the administration for working on this. Mary, you also said, I mean, it's starting this winter with the students on athletic teams, but it's also something that all students are going to ultimately experience, right?
Right. Yes, we're working with the athletic teams to kind of pilot out the work with them, and then we will bring it to the largest student body in the school year 21-22. And in the ADL training that I talked about, that they're coming to train peer leaders, it's not just the Anti-Discrimination Club. We're going to be looking for leaders from the sport teams as well as the other co-curriculars to be leaders for this work.
And then there's also work being done with the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee as well for the community, for community-wide. Is that what you said as well?
Yeah, I think so. We've been focused on Martin Luther King Day celebration right now. So, and then we will talk further about other work we can do. And I think Steve Bartha also has a committee that he's working on to also have some community action happen.
Yeah, because I think it would be great to share what our experiences and information and training that we're going through with the with town members as well. Mm-hmm. I would think.
Yeah.
But no, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah, I just want to add my thanks to the administration for making this happen. We are walking the talk. You know, we brought the challenge to you. I don't remember when it was, last spring, I think. and said, you know, we're concerned about the culture at the high school, and we want to make it, you know, we want to make a positive change. Change doesn't happen overnight. You can't shift culture overnight. It's a long, steady process, and I'm glad we've started it, and we have a lot more to do. But I think we're making really great progress in the short amount of time. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And we look forward to additional presentations now that we have set that foundation and the work, the prep work over the first half of the school year to share more. And I think one of the next pieces will be to define more of the courageous caring and to give you more examples of what is this really looking like in all of our schools. So we look forward to that in future agendas during this school year.
Great.
Okay, so thank you. Next, we have our monthly agenda item, and we've changed it from reopening over the last couple of months to educating during a pandemic, our update. So we'd ask Mary again to bring this presentation up. And we will put both of these presentations on our website tomorrow morning for the community. Okay, so what we are doing on a monthly basis, and during COVID, it seems really difficult to extend. We know where our goals are, we know where our endpoint wants to be, but we take it month by month in assessing where we've been, what new research, where is the state, where's the federal government, what are our resources, and then being able to come and make presentations to our school community through our school committee meeting, and then to give updates. Okay, so we're going to begin. Mary, thank you. I'll take the first couple of slides, and then a bulk of this is for Keith Taverner's updates, and then Mary will come in at the latter part of the presentation with more updates from the Department of Education around the structured learning time. So again, we've seen this slide, equity, and thank you to Mr. Crane. You also brought that up about the safety pieces. So it's our emotional safety, our physical safety, and having an equitable learning environment that provide that culture that we need for all of our students. So with that, again, multiple ways of showing it, and thinking people may come in at our meetings at different times, how important this is. So our 4 major mitigation strategies of wearing a mask, having our physical distance, hand washing, and staying home when sick. We also have our Danvers Public Schools Family COVID information sheet, and this is on our website. Anytime that there are updates from CDC through our public health, and it's the Massachusetts Public Health, and then working with our Danvers Public Health, this will include information about close contacts, our quarantines, and our travel restrictions. Again, it is posted and updated on the website, and we try to send that out multiple times to our families through our ConnectEd messaging system. Okay, turn it to Keith.
So we wanted to take an opportunity this month to update you on some varying topics, but that are all related to our ongoing work as we continue to navigate through the pandemic. So the first is around funding and stimulus relief. So we've all seen in the news the development of these different areas. So CARES Act is one of our funding sources. This is what we talked about in the first half of the year. This funding was originally set to expire on December 31st, 2020. The majority of these funds have been expended, as the extension wasn't announced until December 27th or 28th. So while it is appreciative that it was extended, it was a little bit late for us to actually be able to implement that. So the majority of those funds have been expended, and we continue to work collaboratively with Town Hall around those. The second set of funds that we knew we had for this year were ESSER funds, the Elementary and Secondary Education Emergency Relief Funds. Those funds still remain to be expended by June 30th, 2021. And as we've discussed at some of our past meeting and our work, that's really geared towards cleaning expenses for the second half of the year, as well as supplemental PPE needs that we have. At our last meeting, when Mr. Spiliotis came in his last, I think, official act before he went off into retirement, he did mention there was an additional 50 million, 47.2 million, I think is the exact amount in the state budget for allocation to schools. We still wait for what that funding allocation will be based on the legislative process. So at least as of today, I have not heard any update to that. Mr. Crane might have an update. Okay, I see him
I did not.
shaking his head that he doesn't also have an update on that. In late December, when the CARES Act got extended, it was part of that larger federal relief that was signed into law by the president. And that was the federal stimulus bill, ESSER 2 is what they're referring to that. So that bill was a total of $900 billion with $82 billion for K-12 education. Of that amount, about $815 million will be coming to Massachusetts. That funding for that will be based on the Title I formula. So it'll be approximately $1 million that will come to the Danvers Public Schools. It is a grant directly to the school district and not to the town of Danvers. One point to highlight on that is that the funding goes through 9/20/2023. So this money is really geared towards the next 2.5 fiscal years. So it is an extensive timeline to help with PPE type of costs, as well as any funding instabilities that we might hit in future years. So we will be looking to remain conservative with that to make sure we set ourselves up for long-term financial success over the coming years, as revenues may remain unstable for the foreseeable future. Mary, if we go to the next slide. So the last meeting, we talked about the DESE Binax Now rapid testing program and our ongoing implementation. So last week, there was registration links that were sent out to families and staff that were consent forms. So those materials have gone out. We are looking at implementing this during the second half of January. There's additional nurses training on January 15th. We have received the testing materials in hand. And again, as we talked about last month, we really want students to stay home when they don't feel well. This isn't an avenue to come to school to be tested. Students really need to stay home and work with their healthcare providers if they're not feeling well. This is if a symptom is to come up during the school day that wasn't present before you came to school, an avenue in response to that, but will be balanced with all of the other nursing duties that our nurses do. So there's not a guarantee that you'll definitely get this test, because if a nurse is out sick or a nurse has 6 kids in front of her with other medical needs, they might not have the capacity to do this, but we will do our best to test whatever students we are able to. Again, this is a rapid antigen test. A follow-up PCR test, a molecular test, is needed if this rapid test comes back negative. Based on the accuracy of the test through the initial data, which is in the 94% plus range for high viral loads, if it comes back positive, the DPH protocols will begin immediately. So essentially, if it's positive, we're going to treat it as a real positive case and move forward. If it's negative, per the guidance, that students would still need to be tested with one of the molecular tests. Faster identification of students and staff who may be positive. Obviously, that's what this is all about, is being able to identify students earlier. And again, the families received that message last week from Project Beacon with the registration links. So now transitioning on Friday, the governor at his press conference announced a pooled testing pilot program. It's a joint effort by the governor and the commissioner's office. There is an informational webinar that is going to take place tomorrow morning for superintendents and assistant superintendents to listen to. Intent for interest in the program is due by January 15th, which we've already submitted. It's a 6-week early launch program with costs covered by DESE. As we developed these slides on Friday, we wrote that it included staffing, testing materials, and shipping. And even that has developed in the latest release from the commissioner's office. It now says that staffing will be done at the local level. So we continue to monitor those developments of how this program truly gets implemented. Testing will begin sometime at the end of January, and then will be an evaluation at the end of those 6 weeks, whether there's local funding sources available to continue that or not. Just a quick overview of what pool testing actually is. It involves taking multiple samples from multiple different individuals and putting them into essentially one batch, and all of those, it's up to 20. different tests that go into that one batch, and it goes into one PCR test. So essentially it's getting 20 individuals tested for the cost of one. And then based on that PCR test result, if it comes back with a positive result, then all 20 individuals in that batch would take one of those Abbott Binax Now box tests to identify which actual individual in that batch was positive, and all students in that batch would be asked to quarantine pending the outcome of those test results. But if it comes back negative, then you've been able to test 20 individuals to know that they do not have the virus for the cost of one PCR test. So it's a cost-effective way of testing more people. Again, so just digging into a little bit more of the details as they've been shared to date. The test is performed at least once per week with a nasal swab, students and staff. Results are delivered within 24 to 48 hours. We actually already talked about the negative and positive tests. The test kits, training, and software will be provided by a third-party vendor and by an outside lab. And then again, there'll be more consent forms coming in the next few weeks regarding this program to consent into this program as well. Vaccination, another topic. We talked about this a little bit at our special workshop. K-12 education is in phase 2 of the vaccination plan. It is still anticipated from February into April. So obviously we're hoping for the early end of that timeline. We're awaiting additional information from the state and DESE around implementation. For example, for first responders being vaccinated, it's happened at 60 regional sites. So Danvers has teamed with 4 or 5 local towns, and they're doing first responder vaccinations through the Beverly Airport up in the task force building. So looking for those regional sites where people can go through to maximize the resources. Obviously, as you get into education, the number of staff being vaccinated is higher than first responders. So they'll most likely be looking at larger locations or more locations, but we keep waiting for those details. We've had those initial conversations with our public health nurse and our director about the options depending on what that state guidance is. And again, as our nurses start to do this testing, we're very thankful that through the state and through Mark Carlisle, they've been able to be included as first responders to give them that extra level of protection as they begin the testing on our behalf next week. So now changing gears a little bit into staffing, we continue to look at what our staffing looks like to provide services around Title I and making sure that we're fully staffed there, as well as substitutes. Kelly Services, who is our outside provider, has had an increase in that substitute pool and continue to actively recruit. So over kind of that break time, they were able to increase that size of the substitute pool. So we're hopeful that helps us as we get back into the swing of hybrid learning. Also, a program that DESE has released is a high school senior internship and education program. So this is geared around future teacher recruitment and really looking to maximize those students who might want to be teachers in the future, whether they know it now or whether it's something that's on their radar, to allow them to go out and begin placements as early as February. It'll be for 120 total hours, and students are actually paid for this work. So they're paid for minimum wage. It's through partnerships with local workforce boards. They're doing the placement, the payroll, the funding, and really it's about getting kids into hybrid classrooms and out to support classrooms. So they could be daily substitutes. They could be another live check-in with students. They could just be an extra set of hands. There's kind of a lot of flexibility built into this. And this would be kind of in addition or running simultaneously already to our senior internship program through a state initiative. So it's really focused on grades K to 8. They do say that they can work with 9th and 10th grade students, but obviously we know that as you have a senior with some of their friends in a 10th grade classroom, it might not be the best fit. So we keep looking at what does that look like, whether, you know, at the high school that might be more tutoring versus the younger grades, they might have more of that lead role as a daily substitute if possible. It does include professional development along with the actual working. So it's actually statewide PD, so it's run by the state. Topics include how to support a lesson plan, classroom management skills, how to work with your teacher partner and how to communicate. So it's really starting to give them some of those skills they would learn through a college education prep program to give them that first look into it. There is a focus through the state on diversification of our education workforce. So really giving an opportunity to expose high school students to what a future career could be. Then I think we're going to transition to Mary.
Yes, I am going to speak on a new regulation that DESE, the Department of Education, passed in late December. So they, in the new regulations, they provided guidance on the amount of live instruction that we must give over a 10-day school period. So the regulation states that schools and districts and schools operating a hybrid learning model must provide students with access to at least 35 hours of live instruction over a 10-day school period, the average across the grades in the hybrid model. So our average was 30 hours of live instruction on the day that they collected, which was November 2nd. And as you know, we implemented, a new model starting on November 30th, and our average now is 35 hours of live instruction. So we have that, we have met that requirement by having the average across our grade levels meet the 35 hours that DESE has required. The second regulation that they put in place was that students must have the opportunity to interact with educators each school day, including a required daily live check-in between students and educators. K through 8, this is happening daily. And so that change had actually happened before November 30th, but now at Danvers High School, we are adding that in starting with the second semester. So that will be something new, and Danvers High School students and families will be updated on that in communications over the next 2 weeks. And another update that came out of the Department of Education was around assessment and accountability. So they've made some modifications to their testing, standardized testing this year. The first is for the class of 2021, that they are modifying the competency determination, and they're not going to only look at a qualifying MCAS score, but they also are going to be able to award the competency determination by having students pass approved courses and by demonstrating competency in the subject and in a way that they seem fit. They also are taking the MCAS test for grades 3 through 8, and they are modifying that, and they will shorten the amount of testing time. Again, the amount of time that we do have with our students is very precious. So they understand that, and they don't want a lot of it spent on testing. So they are going to have students only take a portion of each MCAS assessment and use that information from the testing as diagnostic as far for us. And since it is going to be a diagnostic test, they are providing accountability relief. So there won't be any kind of accountability ratings for school districts. So no new underperforming or chronically underperforming schools or districts will be designated in the upcoming school year. We are normally at this time of year, we would be doing access testing. So we are doing some access testing, but they've extended our window. Normally this testing ends before February vacation, but they've extended the window through or up to May 20th, 2021. So we've slowed down our testing schedules and extended it across the months. We will take that time and test up through May. This will give us more time to service students. Often in January and the beginning of February, we are not able to service students in the way that we would like, or as much as we would like, because of this testing program. So this has been a great concession for us, and really going to be able to give us more time with students when they are in our hybrid model. And then finally, the MCAS biology test. So they've given us some flexibility on scheduling the high school biology test. And so we can offer this test in June instead of, or in addition to offering it in February. And it's in Danvers, we offer that in June because we have full year courses versus other districts that have block scheduling and do half-year courses. So we will be working on that in June. And I'm sure more updates will be given as the MCAS testing happens. So I think that is it. Well, Lisa?
Thank you, Mary. And to Keith for the detailed updates. Our next steps, we'll continue with our monthly updates. And looking forward, we can see that two of the major pieces for February will be that the federal funding through the state of Massachusetts to find out the details there and the timing. And then also we will be presenting the FY22 budget at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Let's start with questions. Mary Beth?
Just a couple to start. Mary, last year's grade 10 students missed the MCAS. What does that mean this year for them?
The grade 11 students, they are not at this far. I'm not 100% clear on what their expectations are, but for now that they said grades 3 through 8, the testing is going to be at the sampling piece. So we'll get more information as that gets closer.
I was just wondering if they have to make up last year's.
They were going to do that in January, but then they pushed that testing out of January and are going to give us an update later.
Okay, so we really don't know. Can you just clarify again, just one more time, what the daily schedule is for students in K through 8?
Okay, well, it's different. K through 5 is different than 6 through 8. Is that what you're looking?
Yeah, I'm just for clarification purposes, how we get to the total hours.
Okay, so in K through K and 1, they students now are in full-time 4 days a week. So they have 4.5 hours of live instruction according to Department of Ed's definition of live instruction time with teachers. And we have about 1.5 hours of non-instructional time. That includes lunch and mask breaks. In grade 2 through 5, we have the hybrid model. So they're in for 2 days and then they're remote for 2. So while they're in, they have about 4.5 hours of live instruction, just like the K and the 1. And then when they are remote, they have about, depends on the level, they have about 2 hours of live instruction and about 3.5 hours of asynchronous instruction during those days. 6 through 8, they have 5.5 hours of live instruction with 1 hour of non-instructional time, which would be mass breaks and lunch. And then they're on the hybrid model as well. So when they're at home, they have 2 hours of live instruction and 3 hours of asynchronous work to be done. And then at the high school, or do you go?
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, high school.
High school is same 5.5 hours on 2 days a week with 1 hour of non-instructional time. And then obviously on the remote days, they have 5.5 hours of asynchronous work to do, but they are adding in now a daily check-in, which will be somewhere between half an hour and an hour of time.
And who's that check-in going to be with? Each class or just one?
Yep, each class, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and it's going to be done with a Danvers High administrator along with guidance counselors and social workers. And there are also some remote teachers that have the support block that first period as well that may as well join them because they'll then continue on and do support in their subject for the rest of the block.
Will that check-in be like for a particular like English class or is it individual check-in?
No, it's a individual class-wide check-in, so they'll get announcements like they would if they were in for homeroom. The guidance counselors will do some work with them, as well as some of the social workers could provide that opportunity. So the plans are still being finalized, but that is some of the ideas that they've had so far. So more details to come to Danvers High's families and Dr. Colombino's updates.
Okay. That's it right now, Dave. I might have another question, but right now that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, my only question was kind of along the same lines, was the live instruction. I mean, if I'm doing the math right, 35 hours, 10 days, that's about 17 and a half hours per week that you have to average. If you're live 5.5 hours per day, that's 11 hours. Isn't that means you need 6.5 hours of some sort of live instruction over the 3 days you're not in school, right? On average.
On average, yeah, on average.
Right, and I mean, I guess the only thing I would say to that, I guess our numbers eventually work out, but you know, and I've said this before too, I would like to see us not just sort of shoot for the minimum, you know, like we were at 30, now we're at 35, okay. I mean, I don't know that we should be patting ourselves on the back for that. I mean, the reason the state put that in place was because they felt, I'm assuming, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that the live instruction is needed more so than what we were saying originally, which was, well, you're not going to live stream another video at the same time you're teaching live because you get more instruction when you're there in person, and therefore that live instruction for us when a teacher is focused is extra special and extra good and all of that. Well, it sounds like the state is saying now, well, yeah, maybe, but not really. Like they're almost right saying now, well, that's great you did that, but we would really rather have you provide live instruction, even if a teacher is just sort of not really paying attention to the kids online. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
that would be what I would interpret that to be versus kind of what we're doing.
Exactly. You'll see at some high schools that the kids are in person but they're behind a computer because the kids are live streaming in. So everyone's behind a computer, even when you're physically in school. So you don't have the full attention of your teacher teaching you live in person. You're learning behind a computer screen. So yes, they might have more hours than 35 hours of live instruction, but what is the quality of that instruction? And we went with the quality was going to be in with the teacher that's standing in front of you, teaching you in person. So, and that's why we're at capacity. We're not shooting for the bare minimum. We're at the capacity of what we have, of the educators we have and the work they're doing. If you look at the elementary and see what some of those teachers, you know, the remote teachers teaching the full remote kids and the hybrid remote kids and kind of combining classes together so that we can provide that live instruction. We are really working at full capacity for the staffing that we have. And so, you know, if someone's sick, it is hard to try to cover all those classes. We have an amazing elementary team, the principals, the curriculum directors, the coaches that have really been able to step up and fill in for teachers when they are not able to be there. But when that happens, we realize it really helps us realize how the staffing is. That's why we are at where we are at the 35 hours of live instruction.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the trade-off we made, right? And we've talked about this before, I won't go into it.
With the full remote program as well.
Right, exactly, right. Because there are others that are using that sort of beaming in at the same time to get more than 35 hours. And I understand, I mean, we've all gotten letters from parents that say, gosh, I'm not getting enough live time. And, you know, my student can finish off their homework in an hour or two on a Wednesday or on a day when it's asynchronous, and, you know, gosh, shouldn't they have more? So, I mean, as long as the data and teachers are saying, look, they are learning more with this methodology than if we were to do a live stream at the same time half the cohort is in the class, then we can stick with this, right? If that is what we are saying, then that's fine. You know, I just want to make sure, you know, we're not getting more people that are saying, well, the live isn't really overcoming for us not able to do that. And so, you know, if we're in compliance with what the state is saying, and we're not only doing it to the letter, but also of the spirit, right? And I think that's more important. So if we're doing it for the spirit and we're really focused on the learning, then I'm okay with that. But I just want to make sure that that's happening as well. So that was my main question. Thanks.
Great. Arthur?
So just let me just ask one more little question about the hour thing. Because it's like the kind of thing that stuck out to me. So the requirement is that districts and schools must provide students with access to at least 35 hours of live instruction over a 10-day period. And then we say that Danvers average is 35 hours of live instruction. So average to me tells me that maybe sometimes we do 32 and sometimes we do 38 and sometimes we do 33 and sometimes we do 37, but that wouldn't comply, would it? Because we must provide at least 35 hours per 10-day school period. So is that just a semantic thing that I'm picking out because I'm a pain in the butt, but what?
No, you actually picked it out, but it's averaged across all the grade levels. So it is average. It's not each grade.
Okay, so we are providing 35 hours
average
of live instruction.
Averaged across the grade levels.
Okay, so does every grade get 35 hours every 10 days?
Not every grade, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that a problem?
Danvers High would be an example.
So is that not complying?
No, it's averaged. The Department of Ed writes that in the regulation.
Okay, so I guess, okay, so I'm looking at, so the Danvers schools must provide students with an average.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, as long as you're complying.
Yep.
My issue before Christmas was obviously was not so much the virus in the school system because we didn't have any evidence of any school spread, but my concern was the staffing. So how was staffing coming back today? Were we in good shape with staffing?
Today was a good day. Yes. Last week was a good week. Yes. So we're in good shape right now. And again, we, continue to hope that everybody continues to follow those mitigation strategies to keep the number of in-school close contacts that develop at a minimum, which will continue to help our staffing situation. And
I don't know if this was said or not, but we talked about Title I teachers being hired before the break. What are we doing as far as that's concerned?
We were able to add some hours in Title I, and then the team was able to pick up all of the tiered reading instruction that our goals were by using a lot of our existing resources as well. So while we added some Title I hours, we didn't need to add as many as we thought by utilizing some of the specialized in-district help that we already have.
So do we have what we need right now?
We do.
And there's no plans to hire any more?
We're always trying to hire people.
Okay.
This year, not to do that specific need. We still do have teacher aid postings out and substitutes to help cover the first half of your question, but not in the Title I reading instruction realm. We are fully staffed.
Yeah, and although the mid-year data time is coming up at the end of January, so we will, as we look at that data, reassess, and then if we need to hire more, then we'll try to do that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Great. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's talk about special education a little bit. We haven't talked about that too much right now, I don't think tonight. So what are we doing in terms of tracking services, tracking performance, making sure that IEPs are being met? And I say this because, we all get a lot of emails, and one of the themes I see in the emails I receive are concerns expressed by special education parents about how things are going for their students. So can you talk a little bit about how we're doing to manage the process and help manage those students so that we're getting successful outcomes?
I would say, and for the most part, we use the same strategies that we have in the past when you talk about tracking the progress of students, so that each student has their
own individual, the IEP, their individual education plan. So that work is closely monitored with their special education liaison. And then Dr. Tatum, as our student service director, is working with all of the principals and our special education faculty. So that way students, their services are provided and we are checking in, and it is that partnership with the parent. So if a parent does have a question, and again, when they do come to school committee, we really try to make sure that we then have the principal, Dr. Tatum, and with bringing it back to the teachers to make sure that we are providing those services. This year has been, of course, more challenging, as with everything with the COVID, and looking at students and with their IEPs, and then the criteria for the 2-day hybrid program or the 4-day hybrid 4-day program. So those are the conversations that we've had with individual families.
How are we doing in terms of the, I want to call them occupational therapies, things that normally would be delivered by a specialist of some sort? How are students getting those at home, or do they get them when they come into the school? How's that generally working?
Generally, those services are provided in school during their in-school days, or even if it's a remote student, sometimes they come in just for those services that can't be provided in the same fashion remotely. Some of them do happen remotely when possible, but a lot of, especially the OTPT pieces, are in person.
Okay. I guess, people I know want us to talk about special ed more than I think we have in terms of the remote delivery. The truth is, it's a very individualized thing, and there are probably some parents who are really happy with what's happening and some parents who are not so happy. And I guess all I can hope for is for those parents who aren't satisfied or are concerned, maybe that's a better way to put it, make sure you're reaching out to your child's teachers, principals, Mary Tatum, Lisa, people who can really look at your individual need, your individual concern, and address it. And we have to trust that when parents do come forward, we're being responsive. And certainly if that's not the case, that would be a concern. But it's impossible for us in the context of the school committee to talk about individual students or individual services. So I would emphasize to parents and to everybody on the staff, good communication is really key to make sure that we don't have students who are slipping through the cracks. And there'll be IEP season is typically as we get further into the spring, right? We'll be looking at the IEP process. And how do you think that'll be done at this point? In person, by Zoom? How will we be doing that?
I believe that one of the pieces with having the meetings be accessed through Zoom is that the ability for more attendance at the meetings. So that has actually been an upside of the COVID. So I would think, Keith, that for the most part, we're going to continue again at this time. We have to kind of, again, take month by month, and that process really is more in the April to the May and really finishing up in June. So it's a couple months away, but being able to use the technology with the Zoom, we would like to continue doing that where it is effective, and stay with that. And as things begin to reopen for parent meetings, have meetings as needed that way also.
Okay. The senior internship program sounds great. I think that's exciting for students who want to move forward and perhaps be teachers. I would encourage, where possible, to keep the student interns, let us say, sort of connected with the same classrooms, only because you get that cohort kind of a thing. We've been pretty good, I think, about keeping students together and teachers with the same students and whatnot. And I can envision, a high school intern, I wouldn't think you want them going to 2 schools and 4 classrooms in the course of a week, if it can be helped. Again, with the idea of keeping any potential spread down. But the program itself sounds really beneficial for both the students and certainly helps out the classroom teachers as well. And then in terms of I'm sort of where Arthur is on the average hours. I think it's critical that we look for any holes to make sure that, yeah, you want a 10-day average, I get that, that's what the state is requiring. But let's make sure that we don't take too much comfort in averages, and make sure that if we have, a classroom, a grade, a school, wherever, something that isn't quite working and that we're making up for it by higher averages somewhere else, let's make sure that we're sort of keep track of the holes in case they pop up. And that's really all the questions I have at this time, Mr. Chairman. I would say I want to talk a little bit. First of all, thank you to the parents who have sent emails trying to express their concerns. Obviously, there's a pretty overwhelming desire to have the students in school, at least on a hybrid basis. And there's a great number of parents who want students to be in school full-time as soon as possible. There are teachers who are very concerned about making sure that things are as safe as possible. And there are, it's harder in some grades than others for the social distancing. I would say to everybody in the community, we all want the students to be back to school full time. There's not a person, I don't think, on this board, on the administration, or a teacher who doesn't understand that the best of all possible worlds is to have the students back in class. That's what they like to do. They want students in front of them. We know it's the best way to do it educationally, but the key is to balance that with both community safety and school safety. And I think we'll get back to full time when it's safe to do so within the boundaries that are sort of set, the advice that's set by the public health entities. And I think we have to remember, we have avoided school spread to this point in time because of the remediation that we did, because of the efforts of the system in setting up classrooms, the town in setting up good sanitation and cleaning, social distancing, masks. One of the reasons we haven't seen a spread is because we've been in hybrid and not trying to go full time. I looked at the CDC guidelines for opening schools, and it still directs you to pages that talk about 6 feet in terms of social distancing. The 6-foot distance we've tried to keep is one of the reasons we've been able to keep the hybrid plan going more or less successfully. So, from my standpoint, we're going to do what the science tells us to do. At this point, it feels like we're in a good place. And as you may have seen from the workshop, there are really some positive developments. The pool testing and the fact that staff will start to be vaccinated in phase 2 of the vaccination project really bode well for the future. At the same time, we have to look at what happens. Could there be another community spread? Is there something that will happen that we don't expect? So I think the key for the public to know is that we as a school committee, we're always trying to react to, anticipate and react to changing circumstances, as is the staff, as is Lisa and her team and the teachers. And that's what we'll do with the idea of making sure that the students are getting the best they can in terms of education at any given point in time. And when the time comes to get the students back in school full time and we can do it safely, then we'll do that. But just know that we all know what the goal is. And we just have to keep reacting to what nature throws at us and listen to the science, listen to the health professionals, and we will get there. We will get there. It may not be in a certain day, may not be as fast as we all want, but we will get there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thanks, Eric. And I'm just going to touch on that before I ask my couple of questions. I agree with everything you just said, and I have been responding to all of those emails that have been coming in to the school committee with language similar to what you just said. That our goal is to get students in school at a full-time basis. Right now, based on the guidance that we've been following all along, which is the 6-foot separation, we simply do not have the space to do that. Even, by moving, kids into non-traditional classrooms, then we don't have the staff to do that. So there's multiple issues, but our goal is to get kids in school as soon as possible when it is safe. And it's also an agreement with our teachers that are doing an amazing job during this pandemic. You know, they have pivoted as much, if not more, than anyone else. They're doing a great job. And, you know, our current agreement with them is that we will have 6 foot distancing, because that's what the CDC is recommending. And to your point, Eric, is what I also believe has helped us to be able to really reduce the spread and keep the numbers down to a minimum in the school. So I just wanted to touch on that, and again wanted to say my appreciation to the teachers for doing all they're doing through this, which I meant to say earlier in the meeting. In terms of questions, I just have, I think, 3. I just want to make sure the live instruction that we're talking about, that 35 hours, that is exclusive to these check-ins, right? The check-ins are on top of the live instruction. Is that correct?
It's inclusive actually of that.
Okay. That is concerning because I don't think, you know, we're not providing live instruction during a check-in. We're just checking in. So I think we need to figure out.
That was part of the definition of the Department of Education. So they had us include that as part of what they call live instruction, because of their whole premise of doing this is that they want teachers' eyes on kids. And so the homeroom and the SEL and the, you know, kind of like the check-ins with kids are part of what they deem as live instruction time.
Okay, that makes me feel better, as long as that is, you know, from the state deemed as live instruction. Because I would think parents listening at home would say, you know, my kids aren't getting 35 hours of live instruction if we were including the check-ins as part of that. But apparently that is the guidance. So
guidance. And then the elementary, I gave a general a statement of the time instead of going through like each grade level what the time was. So that was the other part of that. It varies at what grade level, what your live amount of time is during the remote hybrid days.
Okay, thank you. And then I agree with Eric that I think the internship for students interested in education seems like a neat opportunity, but I just also want to confirm that we're not going to try and run an internship program this spring in the middle of COVID. Is that correct?
It would look different. So that's our next piece to take a look at. But again, it needs to, and again, I think what we were able to do last year very quickly to look at what experiences for high school seniors when an internship doesn't look the same during COVID.
Right.
So it's all part of looking at those the last quarter for our seniors and what we'll be able to do.
Right. I think I've been clear in the past that, you know, I don't think the internship program should be mandatory. I think it's something where kids that have an opportunity to get experience in a subject area that they're interested in should be able to do. But I, again, don't think it should be mandatory. And in a situation where we are, you know, concerned about getting 35 hours of instruction a week and potential of students who have not met the maybe the milestones or the requirements that they normally would have in a time when we would have been, you know, in normal 5 days a week, losing that time to an internship, I think could be detrimental. So that's my opinion on that. And then I have a question that I think I know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyways. With the MCAS, since we are not being held to it, do we have to do it? Do we have to participate? Because you said, Mary, let me just check my notes, that we were, there's no accountability. So can we opt out?
There's no accountability like designation, you know, how they tell us if they, you know, how you're performing.
Right.
There's not gonna be an accountability because the MCAS there was no MCAS test last year. And then this year will not be a full MCAS test. They really can't calculate those accountability designations, you know, do all that number and all that data that they crunch to determine that. So yes, everyone's going to take it, but they're going to do a sampling of what part of the test you get, and then we are supposed to take the results and use it as diagnostic. They really feel strongly that this will help us understand whether kids are meeting the grade level standards that we've set out to teach them.
Like I said, I knew the answer, but was going to ask the question anyways. And, you know, just feel that it's a shame to be taking away, what we've talked about, this precious live instruction time, to be doing a standardized test that's not going to help anyone. That's it, unless anyone else had any follow-up questions for the team. So we'll move on to the facilities update.
So just a short update this evening. We're excited the Smith School project continues on pace to open up for the start of next school year. And the exciting work right now is around selecting and purchasing the furniture that will be going into the building. So that's been much of the work over the last month or so, and with the school building committee coming up at the end of January.
Great. Yeah, it's coming along very nicely. Any questions for Keith? All right, let's move on to new business and fundraising requests.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends the approval of the fundraising event submitted through January 11th, 2021 in your packet.
So moved.
I think Arthur said a second, even though it was on mute.
Second.
Excellent. So we have a motion and a second through our policy here for remote. We'll do a roll call for all those in favor. Mary Beth Very.
Yes.
Jeff Kay.
Yes.
Eric Crane.
Yes.
Arthur Skamras.
Yes.
And I say yes as well. So the fundraising request passes. We'll move on to out-of-state and field trip requests.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends the approval of the out-of-state overnight field trip request for the DHS Music Department to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, December 4th through the 9th, 2021. And I would add the piece that there are COVID related travel pieces in place for the safeguards.
So moved.
Second.
And I forgot to ask in the last one on fundraising. Any discussion on this?
In terms of the Pearl Harbor trip, Lisa, so trip insurance, when you say there are things in place for the COVID, what are you referring to?
It is the trip insurance, and we would require as part of the package that all families have the trip insurance, which would give us, if this is December, and I asked Keith just to verify that it would be October 1st for us as a district to make that decision. So if things were looking iffy as of before October 1st, we would be coming the September meeting or holding a special meeting before October 1st to make a decision of going forward or not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, roll call on this. All those in favor. Eric Crane.
Aye.
Mary Beth Very.
Yes.
Jeff Kay.
Yes.
Arthur Skamras.
Yes, I really hope it works.
It's the 80th anniversary.
It works, so the field trip passes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to unfinished business. We just have one, which is the independent review of Danvers High School culture and climate. We did a whole section on culture, and as I mentioned, it's something that's going to take time to change, and also something that's taking time is the investigation. But I do have a couple of pages here to read to everyone regarding the ongoing investigations that we've had related to culture and climate. First, I just want to talk a little bit about the process. So the investigation consists of three parts: information gathering, fact-finding, and disposition. The investigator's job is to complete the first two parts. The district administration, under the Education Reform Act, is tasked with the third and final piece, which is making a disposition based on the investigator's fact-finding. Employers frequently receive reports or complaints about employee actions. Just because allegations targeting a certain individual are being investigated does not mean that the individual is culpable. Until the investigation is done, the status of the matter is that there is an allegation under investigation, nothing more. Sometimes, in an abundance of caution, an employer removes individuals from the workplace or specific assignment while the investigation is ongoing. This is not disciplinary. It is an interim measure routinely employed and intended to protect the integrity of the investigation and put the welfare of students first above all other considerations. Given the importance of preserving the integrity of an investigation and the well-being of students, an employee's understandable distress at being placed on inactive status, does not take priority over the district's procedures and obligations to investigate complaints. Sometimes, in light of new information or changed circumstances, the investigation does not always proceed directly from point A to point B. Often, it may appear that an investigation goes backwards or zigzags, sometimes multiple times. Investigations go where the facts lead. The purpose of the investigation is to get it right, even if it means retracing steps. The final step of disposition could take the form of discipline, such as a reprimand, suspension, or termination, or none of the above. So where are we in the process? The scope of the investigation that the school committee voted on August 11 led to 5 discrete matters that have come under the investigator's purview. The independent investigator has thus far reached out to 73 individuals and has interviewed 21 people and has gathered numerous pieces of documentation. The investigation is complete as to 2 matters, and we expect the investigator will complete all her work by the end of January. The 2 completed matters involve personnel. Because of the legally recognized privacy rights of these individuals and their rights of due process, we are following our legal counsel advice not to discuss further details. We will consider releasing the investigatory report if the subject of the investigation agrees to waive any and all privacy or other claims and signs a release in the form recommended by the district legal counsel. Please consider what you hear from the subject of a complaint or its supporters is only one side of the story. The district administration has the investigator's findings on the 2 completed matters and is deliberating on the consequences, if any, to follow. Any consequences will need to be fairly supported by the investigator's findings of fact. Here, as with many investigations, a number of the 73 people whom the investigator reached out for an interview either did not respond or responded by saying that they were not going to participate. As I'm sure you can understand, the investigator cannot make findings of fact based on Facebook posts alone. She also cannot fairly rely on secondhand account events. In other instances, when witnesses were contacted, they requested interview conditions that could not be met due to the need to maintain integrity of the investigation, and they decided not to participate. At the end of the day, the investigator gathered the facts that she could and made findings that she decided in the exercise of her independent judgment could be fairly made based on those facts. The administration will now take those facts and determine the appropriate disposition that is fairly supported by those facts. A further update on the remaining matters under investigation will be provided at our next regular meeting. Any questions or comments from the committee? All right. We will move on to order of business then, communications.
Thank you. We have attached is our North Shore Education Consortium in the website for updates.
Great, thank you. Eric, legislation?
Nothing to report at this point. I thought I'd let our new representative get herself settled before I start pestering her, which I will. So
I'm sure she appreciates that. Subcommittee updates. Mary Beth, Deep.
Deep will be having our monthly meeting this Wednesday, January 13th, 8 a.m. It will be held virtually. Anyone wishing to attend can email Deep at deep@danvers.org for the link. And we'll be sponsoring this year's Holton Richmond Spelling Bee that will be taking place virtually on Tuesday, January 26th. More information on that will be posted on our website and Facebook page as well. That's it right now for Deep. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jeff, Danvers Cares.
Okay, great. I guess, is Lila going to be presenting next month, Lisa, do we know, or?
I don't believe so, but we could, I think that probably would be a nice idea to do a check-in.
Yeah,
a summary. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, just a quick update. So we had our last meeting on the 4th, so a week ago, and covered a lot of ground, right? Covered some of the mental health navigator work that we've done, the youth group plans, the anti-discrimination club that we had mentioned before, Minding Your Mind events as well. And so a lot of really, really good work that continues even though, you know, we're in the hybrid model. in particular with the students. They're just doing a tremendous amount of work. So want to thank them for all the work that they're doing with Danvers Cares as well.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Lisa, the CPAC.
Thank you. For CPAC, this Thursday has our next remote virtual professional, I'll say, meeting and workshop. It is supporting your child through remote learning. And the information is on Facebook. We have sent that out to parents also. So people could visit the Danvers CPAC Facebook for additional information about registering for the workshop. So we are appreciative of the work of our co-chairs for CPAC and putting together timely events that are for all of our parents, and they have others planned for the springtime also.
Great, thank you. Policy, we do not have an update unless Arthur, you know something I do not? Nope. Okay.
Not.
Excellent. Eric, back to you for the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee.
We talked earlier today about the Martin Luther King presentation, which has been the focus of a lot of work by the committee. Our next actual meeting is January 21st, so I'm sure there'll be we'll review that presentation and how that program went, and continue talking about other upcoming subjects. That should be on Zoom. It's an open meeting, so I invite anybody to tune in.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to stay with you for the minutes.
All right, I move that we approve and release the minutes from the December 14th, 2020 regular and special workshop meetings, as well as to approve and not release the minutes from the December 14th, 2020 executive session.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I will do the roll call to approve. Eric?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Whoop, you're on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thank you. I thought you mouthed yes, but I wanted to get confirmation. Jeff?
Yes.
Arthur?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so the minutes are approved. Keith, we're going to move to you for budget and donations.
Before you have the monthly budget report for December, I'm happy to report that we still remain on budget for this fiscal year, and we'll continue to monitor expenses as we get into January and on around PPE, but we should be in good shape. And then would like to thank the Looters Company, Environmental Inc. out of Needham. They're an environmental lawn, tree, and shrub care company, and they made a monetary donation to the school district that'll help support the science curriculum. So thank you to them.
Very nice of them. Thank you. Keith, we'll stay with you for personnel.
Your personnel report for the month of December, would like to take a moment to thank Amy Ladd and Denise DiGiuseppe, both who retired at the end of the calendar year officially. Thank them for their many years of service and wish them a healthy and happy retirement.
Yes, I agree. I served on the wellness committee with Denise, and she was great. And Great Oaks taking a hit there too at one time.
Yes, but excited to welcome new team members aboard too, and we're sure that they'll do a great job in the second half of the year.
Excellent. We wish them well in retirement. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 8th. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Just real quick, do we have any potential dates for selectmen, finance committee, anything like that, or are we not quite there yet?
We're not quite there yet. It will be, we're assuming sometime in early March.
Okay.
Is when those meetings typically occur.
That's great. Thanks.
Great. If there's nothing else, I would look for my favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on adjourning? Hearing none. Roll call. Eric?
Aye.
Mary Beth?
Aye.
Jeff?
Yes.
Arthur?
Yes.
I am a yes as well. Thank you all very much, and good night, Danvers.